The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.
Antibiotics. They're a savior to many people suffering from infections, but too often these prescription drugs are misused, resulting in deadly consequences. Vision loss can be a devastating ordeal, often leading to a loss of independence. Fortunately, innovative video magnifiers can give people a new outlook on life. As we age, monitoring our blood pressure daily is recommended, but that would require daily visits to our doctor. Perhaps this simple wristwatch monitor can change that. Often we try to disguise it, but hair loss will not go away on its own. For many women, fighting back with topical treatments has proven to be a safe solution. All these topics are coming up next on Today's Health. This program is brought to you in part by Mark of Fitness, Pharmacia and Upjohn, Optilec, and by an educational grant from Pfizer U.S. Pharmaceuticals.
When you pick up a new prescription, do you read it? Do you even understand it? Hello, I'm Faith Daniels, and this is Today's Health. Knowing what you've been prescribed and how to take it can often help you prevent prescription errors.
For about 50 years, antibiotics have controlled life-threatening illnesses, reduced death, and increased life expectancy. But now, continuous use and abuse of antibiotics has caused more bacteria to become resistant. Much of this problem is caused when patients don't complete their antibiotic prescriptions. The medication kills many bacteria, but unless completed, many survive. The strongest remain alive, and the next time the antibiotic is given, it becomes fuel for resistant bacteria.
Bacterial resistance is an important issue, and it's becoming even more important as stronger and stronger antibiotics are developed.
Bacteria are some of the most abundant and simplest life forms on Earth. They can produce a new generation about every 20 minutes. A single cell can produce millions of new cells each day, and as they divide and reproduce, they have a tendency to mutate.
It is very common, for instance, for an antibiotic to be prescribed for 10 days. When a person's feeling better, the natural inclination, what is done is that the antibiotic stopped. What happens is that there may be enough antibiotic given to suppress an infection or suppress the bacteria, but it's not completely killed. It is important for patients to comply completely with the course of antibiotics, because if they stop midstream after just 3 or 4 days after the symptoms go away, the bacteria may not be completely killed.
I had a bronchial infection, and I was on an antibiotic that I took for about 4 days. I started to feel better, so I stopped taking the medication. About 2 days later, I felt the symptoms much stronger than I had in the beginning, and I felt a lot worse, so I called my doctor back, and he gave me another antibiotic that was stronger than the first one.
When I first started suffering from sinus infections, mostly, or respiratory infections, or ear infections, occasionally I would stop taking the medication earlier than the doctor ordered. Maybe once or twice. It was only counterproductive because I ended up being sicker, longer.
In recent years, strains of tuberculosis, pneumonia, salmonella, and other bacteria that are resistant to multiple antibiotics have appeared. If we don't become more responsible about prescribing antibiotics and complying with our prescriptions, we may render ourselves defenseless in the war against infection.
They may be doing more harm than good, if not entirely completed.
In my opinion, not complying with prescription drugs is like playing Russian roulette.
For people taking antibiotics, proper education about their use can help avoid those sick days from becoming something far worse. This topic coming up next.
By complying with antibiotic prescriptions, we can be relatively certain that the bacteria we aim to destroy actually get destroyed and don't mutate to fight another day.
A bacterial infection is caused by hundreds of millions of bacteria that get into the wrong area of the body. What I mean by that is there always is bacteria around on our skin, in our intestinal tract, in our mucous membranes. And as a consequence, they're fine when they sit there. But when they get into an area where they don't belong, that's when it becomes a problem and causes an infection.
Understanding how a bacteria divides and mutates may sound like something from a Hollywood horror movie, but the resistance caused by these mutations is very real and even more frightening than the scariest thriller. In a process called conjugation, two bacteria get close to one another and one sends a strand of DNA to the other. So even if a bacteria cannot develop a resistance to an antibiotic on its own, it can pick up that resistance from another cell.
I've tried several antibiotics before we came to the right one. I can't even probably name them all. There have probably been 7 or 8.
I remember an older surgeon telling me that he once got the first batch of penicillin. That batch had 1,000 units in it, and he was able to treat 4 patients, and miraculously they were cured. They would have died otherwise. Now we sometimes have to use 600,000 units or 1.2 million units 4 to 6 times a day to get the same benefit.
In addition to overprescribing antibiotics, sometimes doctors misprescribe antibiotics. Very often, antibiotics are prescribed for viral rather than bacterial infections.
Sometimes doctors prescribe an antibiotic for a patient who has an infection, and it's not totally clear whether the infection is viral or bacterial. And as a consequence, if he overly prescribes all the time with antibiotics, it may be that, in fact, many of the times he's treating viral infections.
Antibiotics are also often used in raising livestock. Traces of these drugs can enter our systems when we eat and further fortify the bacteria in our bodies.
In the beginning, the intensive care units were breeding grounds for highly resistant bacteria. But over a period of time, these organisms have spread not only from the hospitals but into communities and many countries. And as a consequence, infectious disease doctors are constantly looking to try to find new treatments for these resistant organisms.
It used to be easy to switch to a different antibiotic when one lost its effectiveness against a particular disease. But now bacteria are becoming immune faster than we can develop new drugs. It's up to both doctors and patients to act in a way that no longer feeds the mutation process that could eventually devour us.
Some people only take their antibiotic prescription until they feel better, but that can actually be dangerous. Although the infectious bacteria may be under control, it may not be totally destroyed until the medication is taken through the complete length of the prescription.
It's clear the bacteria can become immune to antibiotics. What's not clear is a simple solution to the problem. The first step may be dependent on doctors and their patients.
Good morning, Dave. How are you today?
I had a sinus infection, and I went to Dr. Warman, and he prescribed some antibiotics. And I took the prescription as he prescribed and as he directed. And I think that if you don't, you got a good chance of not being cured or not getting well. And if you do have a temporary, you feel better temporarily, you could come right back and put you back in worse shape than you was. So I think the bottom line is that you really need to take the prescription as directed.
In my opinion, not complying with prescription drugs is like playing Russian roulette. We are lucky enough to live in a society where there are new medications all the time that are more and more effective, less side effects. And not to take them is saying that you basically know more than the people who created them and you want to suffer. I don't want to suffer.
Pharmaceutical companies are looking to try to develop new antibiotics all the time because of the problem we have with the resistant bacteria all over the world. One of the ways they're trying to do that is through a mechanism of genomics, where they develop DNA changes in the bacteria so that we can then target different areas of the bacteria with different antibiotics, newer antibiotics.
Potential long-term solutions may also lie in a new class of antibiotics which kill bacteria in an entirely different way. Or the ultimate answer may lie in alternatives to antibiotics or even vaccines.
I think at this time the focus is for physicians to appropriately use antibiotics and use them in a streamlined fashion to treat the bacteria that they're specifically looking at, and that in fact patients should not come in and have expectations to doctors' offices of receiving antibiotics every time they have an infection. These are two main modalities that we can try to put into play to decrease resistance.
You have to be an educated patient. You have to know everything about the drugs you're taking, and you have to work with your doctor.
The spread of resistant bacterial strains poses a threat to each and every one of us. If we can all learn to follow our prescriptions to the end and resist demanding antibiotics when they're not called for, we may be able to prolong the effectiveness of our current drugs long enough to find better alternatives.
We often take it for granted until it fails. For people with troubled eyesight, a simple magnification system can help bring lives back into focus. Blood pressure can be the precursor to numerous health problems, but still, many people avoid having it checked regularly. Can monitoring your pressure at home make a difference? You be the judge. Next on Today's Health.
There are few substitutes for reading. Unfortunately, for people with impaired vision, reading can be nearly an impossible task. Recent innovations, though, may allow these people to once again enjoy the magic of the written word.
Growing older can pose many challenges, but there are few problems as difficult as loss of vision. When a person can no longer see clearly enough to drive, read small print, or write checks, it is difficult to maintain an independent lifestyle. Unfortunately, glaucoma, cataracts, macular degeneration, and other visual disorders cause some form of vision loss in nearly 1 out of 3 people over the age of 65.
When a person is over 65, sort of the golden years as we'd like to think of, having to face a visual loss is devastating. It can be devastating because now this person needs to be independent in the worst way.
I had just finished a very nice meal, and I had put on the TV set, and I was watching a TV program, when all of a sudden, the set went black on me. And I thought to myself, well, it's about time. It's about 15 years old, this set, so I got to get a new set. So I blinked a few times, and much to my surprise, it wasn't the TV tube, but it was my eye, my good right eye. So I kind of freaked out a little bit, and I quickly ran into the bathroom where there was a lot of light, and I tried to open my eye, and I knew right then and there, with this incredibly bad vision, that sunsets and sunrises wouldn't mean a damn thing to me anymore. And sadly, I couldn't see the faces of my grandchildren anymore.
For individuals with low vision, there is training, education, and rehabilitation available. Doctors who specialize in low vision and institutions like the Lighthouse in New York and the Dyke Center for Visual Rehabilitation in Chicago can offer treatment information and living tips to help people compensate for their failing eyesight. Innovations like this full-color on-screen video magnifier developed by Optelect can magnify and focus the size of images or text so that people with vision loss can adequately see them.
This video magnifier, for me anyway, was like such a revelation, and it did such wonders for my head at the time. I can do anything that I was doing before. I could draw and paint and write letters.
As the baby boom generation grows ever closer to their retirement years, the number of people faced with the challenge of vision loss will grow by the millions. Hopefully, with new treatments, education, and innovative devices, people with low vision will be able to maintain a high quality of life.
How often do you visit your doctor? There are many conditions like cancer, diabetes, even heart disease that can be treated more successfully if they're detected early. A regular, thorough examination by your doctor can help discover a problem before it becomes a tragedy.
When was the last time you had your blood pressure taken? For many people, it was probably on their last visit to a doctor. But that single snapshot of how your blood is circulating may not be telling the real story. In a doctor's office, people often get nervous, and that can abnormally raise their blood pressure. It's a situation called white coat syndrome. Even at free blood pressure stations in many stores, people can be excited about being out, and their blood pressure can go higher.
The first sound that you hear is the high number, the systolic, and then when the sound disappears, that's the diastolic. The normal ranges for blood pressure for adults are below 140, high number, over 90, the low number, the diastolic. Anything above that is considered high blood pressure.
Regarding my blood pressure, I like to keep it monitored because of the other various ailments that high blood pressure can signal to me.
High blood pressure is fundamentally important. It's sometimes called the silent killer because there's very few symptoms associated with high blood pressure, and it can result in heart attacks, strokes, and kidney disease. Therefore, it's very important to get the high blood pressure under control because you can prevent these problems with simple measures.
Blood pressure fluctuates throughout the day due to many factors. That's why many health professionals recommend that people over 50 monitor their blood pressure at home on a daily basis with at-home monitors, like this wristwatch type developed by Mark of Fitness. This particular monitor has a dual 7-time memory so that 2 different people can store and average their own readings. Mark of Fitness recently won an award for leading design and engineering for this product.
My family has a history of high blood pressure, and I felt comfortable knowing that I could take my blood pressure at any time at home.
What I like to do is, if on the day that I check it, I like to get a reading in the morning and a reading in the evening, see what the difference may be.
It's very important for patients to keep track of their blood pressure. At home, you can frequently measure your blood pressure and then keep track of it with certain devices and then report back to your doctor and let them know whether the therapies that you're receiving for your blood pressure are working or not working.
Keeping your blood pressure down can help cut down on serious illness, hospitalization, and expensive care. Routine monitoring at home allows you to keep a constant vigil on this vital measurement and may help you identify a problem before it becomes a tragedy.
There's a limit to the amount of information we can give you in just 30 minutes, but the internet is virtually unlimited. So visit our website at vstar.com and find out more. Some stress can be a great motivator, but too much stress can negatively affect you both physically and emotionally. Could even compromise your immune system. So if you feel you have too much stress in your life, exercise, meditate, or maybe find another method for controlling it.
No one likes to talk about it. Women try to hide it, but there's no getting around it. Women suffer from hair loss just as much as men. In fact, as many as 20 million women in the United States are affected by some form of hair loss. For some men, hair loss can be a very difficult challenge, and for others, they accept and even welcome the look. For a woman, the public fascination with looks and beauty can make losing one's hair an especially devastating problem.
I equate hair with my image, my overall feeling about who I am, my self-confidence.
I can be frivolous, I can be flirty, I can be sophisticated, I could be very professional, all with changing the style of my hair.
To make a recommendation for a client, for a woman with thinning hair, that's a subject that needs to be handled with a lot of compassion.
Just like in men, hair loss in women is an inherited trait, and through no fault of their own, many women can find their hair thinning by the time they get to be about 30.
When I first started noticing that my hair was getting thinner, as my hair was taken away, so to speak, so was my self-confidence, so was my self-esteem, and just how I felt about myself.
I think what really made me decide to go to the root of the problem is when my husband noticed that my hair was thinning on top. And at that point, he began to tease me about what I would look like without any hair. I have hidden my hair loss in every way possible. Whatever it took to make my hair look fuller, I've done it.
I read a book on getting thicker hair by eating eggs, so I ate more eggs. Stood on my head, rubbed my scalp. I mean, it was one of those things. And then, years ago, there was nothing out there about women and hair loss. Really, I just was so alone with this.
Rather than trying to disguise a problem that will not go away on its own, many women are fighting back against hair loss. In many cases of hereditary hair loss, Rogaine for women, developed by Pharmacia and Upjohn, can actually stop hair loss and stimulate new growth.
When I started using Rogaine, I really wondered if it was going to work or not, but I was really delighted within the first month when I saw what I called baby hairs coming out from my scalp.
As soon as I saw the positive results, of course, it was quite an impetus for me to use the Rogaine twice a day, and I have been for years, and it's just part of my life.
What you eat has an enormous impact on how you feel. A proper low-fat diet may even help prevent many forms of cancer and heart disease. If you want to develop a diet that's right for you and your family, speak to a health professional, and then take a long look inside your refrigerator.
Women do not normally go bald, but they often have a gradual thinning of the hair on the top of their head, and their scalp becomes more visible.
What you start to notice as a hairdresser is every time they come in, their part is diffusing. It's diffusing meaning it's getting gradual, it's getting wider and wider. And that is a big red light there for you to say, hey, it's time to address this problem and give them a solution.
For many of the 20 million women affected by hair loss, the problem can be traced to a hereditary progressive condition called androgenetic alopecia.
At any one time, about 85 to 90% of the hair on our head is growing. The growing period for a hair follicle is about 2 to 6 years, and then it begins a phase of resting for about 2 to 6 months. In the case of hereditary hair loss, or androgenetic alopecia, there is a progressive shortening of the growth phase and a shrinking of certain scalp follicles. Over time, as the active growth period becomes shorter, the rest period becomes longer until there is no growth at all. By rubbing in a product like Rogaine for women twice a day, a woman can prolong the growth phase of the hair follicles, which allows the hair to become longer and thicker.
Now that we have a product that is proved to regrow hair or stop hair loss from happening, that's a major breakthrough for hairdressers as well as the client.
I tend to experiment a little bit more with my hair for good styles, not just to cover up a thinning area. Instead, I'm enjoying my hair.
Now that I've been using Rogaine for years, twice a day, religiously twice a day, and getting my hair back has made me feel normal. And again, talking about women out there, all the women out there going through this, all the 20 million women going through hair loss, they want to feel normal. They want to fit in. And that's one of the things that Rogaine has done for me.
Every woman has a similar perspective on her hair and how important it is. Unfortunately, many of these women must cope with the fact that they are losing their hair. The important thing to remember if you are coping with hereditary hair loss is that you are not alone, and there is a solution.
As we come to the end of this century, our life expectancy is about 78 years old. It's about 30 years more than it was at the beginning of this century. Hopefully, medical advances will continue so that the next 100 years will offer us an even longer life. I'm Faith Daniels. Join us again next time as we get right to the heart of matters concerning your life on Today's Health.
This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.